world's changed. And you are right in the center of it.
I don't know what's ahead, but all bets are off.
Brock Lesnar teasing a comeback, or at least reports that he is a free agent anyway. Nick Diaz and his manager outright teasing some kind of a comeback in 2021 in the welterweight division. So much so, putting out a video where like he had practiced a weight cut and looked to be in fantastic shape. All right, BC, we go back to you. Flat out, do we care about Brock Lesnar and or Nick Diaz in MMA in 2020?
We do. Stop acting like there's any chance we don't. Do we care about them in any form of legitimate fight? No. That's the key distinction. And when this Brock Lesnar WWE free agent news came out, was I playing the clickbait game to a degree? Yes. I also think it's an interesting conversation. I wrote the damn story. I put out the podcast with Rashad Evans where we went for 45 minutes saying, what fights make sense? Business-wise, what do you think? Could he go to Bellator MMA and have a Fedor-like run? Yes, all of the above if he wants to. Well, that's what we don't really know. Yes, he's 43, but we know heavyweights age late. He doesn't have a ton of damage on him. Yeah, he'd have to sit out 6 months for USADA and prove that 2016 win over Mark Hunt can be done without horse steroids pumped into your testicles before the fight. But Luke, overall, when somebody matters this much on a business level, yeah, of course it matters. If he came in and was John Jones's introduction to heavyweight, it's a massive pay-per-view, whether they did it in 2012 or they do it in 2021, and stop acting like it isn't. And look, again, he doesn't comment publicly, Brock. He doesn't go social media. He works out on a damn farm in Canada somewhere. He don't care about your handle or your followers. I don't know if he actually wants to fight. But could you imagine, as Scott Coker, Bellator MMA CEO, tweeted out or told Ariel or whatever, imagine him going to Bellator for stupid money and fighting frickin' Brock? I mean, I'm fighting Fedor, excuse me, in fun circus fights. There are so many fun circus fights. How about Anderson Silva against him? That'd be a fun circus fight. I'd love to do that kind of crap. I don't want Brock against DC for the belt like they were trying to do a couple years ago when it made no sense on 86 levels. But yes, we should care. He's the rare celebrity fighter who matters because he can actually compete in the right matchup. Nick Diaz is a little bit different. Look, all the public stuff we've seen, Luke, and I'll throw it back at you. I'm a little bit nervous physically and mentally where he's at. And I know we've said that his whole career, but obviously this window with this much time off, I don't know, man. I mean, if you're telling me he's going to go in there for one more fight and it'll be some fun BMF thing, okay, cool. But I'm a little bit nervous about his well-being.
Yeah, no one has it's funny. When Brock Lesnar takes time off and comes back, fans are very quick to point out what I would call very fair and relevant factors of his reemergence. He's not been doing full-on MMA training during this time. He beat Mark Hunt, but there was a USADA violation. Before that, he had bad losses, as you indicated, to, let's say, Alistair Overeem, but there's some other ones as well. They sort of point out the things that you are allowed to say as fair, legitimate, noteworthy criticisms. And then when you ask them, well, what about Nick Diaz coming back? The fan base gets collective amnesia about all the different factors that might make you want to put a bit of a limit on your expectations for him. And not just amnesia about what has happened, but, the sort of romanticism even in the present, like after the BMF fight with Jorge. That was a fight Jorge was winning easily. There was no controversy there at all. Jorge was clearly better than Nate Diaz, at least on that night. And that is not the expectation. That is not the conclusion you would come away with. The Diaz brothers have this ability to hypnotize huge swaths of the fan base, and God bless them. They should be getting paid for it. But to hypnotize them, to make them forget about all these other things. This is not George St. Pierre handing back the title so Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks can fight for it, and he can go and train, not like he's in camp, but sort of as a lifestyle, take 4 years off and come back and go up and fight Michael Bisping up at middleweight, where, yes, maybe even had an injury during that time, but he was basically still incredibly active and only walked away because he was burned out with the rigors of being a champion. Nick Diaz, if you had been paying attention to his social media at all, was not doing anything like them. That's changed more recently, but this guy was in Vegas night after night after night after night. And I'm not here to begrudge him that. That's the way he wanted to spend his life. It's the way he wanted to spend his life. but you should manage your expectations about what he can reasonably do when he comes back. This idea that he's going to like jump to the front of the pack and beat elite welterweights, that seems to me incredibly foolish. Hasn't
put him
competed.
in there with
Hasn't competed. I mean, his last big win, where you could look back and be like, "Wow, that's really impressive." What was it, BJ Penn? And that was when BJ Penn beating him mattered. But that's my point. It was when beating him mattered. I do think, to answer the question, BC, very quickly, and I'll throw it back. Yes, clearly there is going to be a market for Lesnar and Diaz. I would just argue, one, probably not what it once was, although still big, especially with the UFC needing to fill out as many events as possible to make sure they get this ESPN money. And then two, it's going to be highly, highly opponent dependent on what kind of real interest the fan base is going to have, because despite the amnesia that some might have about the Diaz brothers, I think even they realize some of these make a little bit more sense than others.
Hey, remember when Hoist Gracie came back against Matt Hughes? You know, so many years removed, like generations removed in terms of the evolution of the sport. I'm not saying Nick is facing that, but I'm saying I would bet my money more on that we have one more Nick Diaz appearance, and maybe it goes maybe not as disastrously as Hoist did, where Matt Hughes just sat on him and punched him out like it was Brock Lesnar against that Asian guy in M1 or whatever. But, you know, I feel like we're going to see him one more time, and that's it. So if you want to cash him out against, you know, BMF style, that's great. But I think he's more on the competitive level potentially of a Clay Guida or Diego Sanchez right now. And I just don't think he's stable. Yeah, I'd care. Of course we would. But, you know, he's not going to come back and reinvent the wheel. Too many years, too much damage and stuff. But I just want to double down and say people got to stop acting like they wouldn't care about Brock. Like, it's not CM Punk here, right? There is an avenue to victory for a freak athlete who's still, you know, showing on TV that he's a freak athlete. I know it's pro wrestling, but like there are fun matchups you could potentially make. And I almost wish the stars would align and he could end up in Bellator and could go the more, you know, circus old guy fun route. I think there's so many fun things you can do there, but you know, we'll see what happens.
Even then, he beats Fedor. Would you hate to see a Brock Lesnar versus Ryan Bader fight? I wouldn't. I'd be kind of interested in that.
Yeah, you can almost talk yourself into believing, especially with the potential of lax drug testing, that he has a chance in that, Luke.
Are you in?
This is our time. The world's changed, and you are right in the center of it.
I don't know what's ahead, but all bets are off.